Welcome to the first episode of Tiny Space Academy, I believe it's called. Here's the tutorial, so we're going to start with this just to figure out these game mechanics. And if anyone here has played a Kerbal space program, this is basically the 2D version of it. Now, it's not made by the same company, but they basically kind of replicated a lot of the mechanics here in a 2D fashion rather than a 3D fashion. So basically this game has three different resources that you need to collect, and one of them is rocks, and you can get those on different planets, moons, stuff like that, and then you can sell those rocks for cash. And cash, of course, is the second resource there, and that allows you to build your rockets, purchase the components in order to do so. So we're going to start out by building a small capsule. The third resource is science, and that allows you to do research to get better parts and stuff like that. So we're going to put a small capsule on there which holds one astronaut, and then a parachute, so we can bring them back safely. We are going to put a small decoupler underneath the capsule so that we can just have the capsule and the parachute come back to Earth. And we are going to put a big fuel tank on it. It's not that big, to be honest with you. It's about standard size. And then we're going to put an engine on it. So the rocket has different stages here. The first stage is decoupling the engine and the fuel tank, and then the second stage is going to be the parachute. So we're going to go ahead and launch this thing. At the bottom there's the stats, so there's power, and then there's the fuel capacity, and they're going to ask me to perform an EVA, so I will send the astronaut out and walk around the launch pad, make sure everything looks okay. Yep, it looks good. Let's get back in the ship. All right. And then now we're going to go ahead and launch this thing. It's just talking about the speed controls and stuff like that. So you can also turn on and off your engines. But this is what we do. We hold down the left shift button and we get our rocket aloft and get that thing going up. And it looks like we've achieved first astronaut in space. So here's our guy. We're going to go ahead and decouple it. We don't need that engine anymore. And now we're just going to go ahead and fall back down. Speed it up a bit. We're going to enter the atmosphere, and then we're going to deploy the parachute with the space bar. And this thing should come down nice and safe. At 12 or 13 meters per second. Looks like we're going to land on the land. So he's not going to have to get wet when he gets out. And there we go. We have successfully launched a person into space and brought them back safely. And we can go ahead and recover the parts. So that gives us some cash back. Now they're asking to do a satellite. So instead of a capsule, we're going to put a computer module basically to run this operation. And we're going to have the science module there so that we can perform some science. And in order to do that, we got to have some power, so we're going to put a battery on it. And in order to charge up the battery, we need a little solar panel. So we're just going to put one little solar panel there at the top of the rocket. There we go. And then now we're going to put a fuel tank on there. And this is a smaller fuel tank, and we're going to put a really small engine 'Cause there's two different types of engines. There's one that's better for the vacuum space, and there's one that's good for in the atmosphere. So this rocket will this engine and fuel will allow us to get into orbit. The first one's just going to get us up. So we're going to put a little fairing on there after our decoupler so that we have some aerodynamics. And then we're going to put that, that bigger fuel tank on there, and then also the first stage engine. Now we're ready to go. So let's get this thing down, and so now you got to learn about orbiting. And orbiting, basically, when you have an orbit, you have a point where you're the farthest away, which is the apogee, and the closest point, which is the perigee. And you want to make sure that your apogee and your perigee are both out of the atmosphere so that you can have a stable orbit. So we've got our lift shift hold down, and we are going to go up. And as you can see, we are getting up into out of the atmosphere. Now we should be able to reduce the thrust a little bit. We're going to ditch the fairing, and we are going to also hit spacebar to decouple the first stage there. And as soon as we do that, the engine's going to fire off, and we're going to try to get this thing into a stable orbit here. It looks like that's not quite stable, as you can see. So we're gonna have to increase it just a little bit. So one of the keys is when you're going forward here, basically, and your engine is pointed, back, you're gonna basically thrust forward, and that's gonna increase the opposite side's distance. So looks like we're in a safe orbit here. We're going to deploy the solar panels. There we go. And now you can see we're charging up. We need to get over to 125, and we just did that. So now we should be able to activate the science module. It takes about a minute to do all the science. So let's just speed this thing up. And there we go. We're going to get an orbit. We just orbited the Earth for the very first time. And we just completed our science experiment. And we're just out of the atmosphere. We're in a low Earth orbit there. We're going to go to the perigee here, which is the lowest point. And they're asking me to save it. So there's a quick save button up here. So we'll just go ahead and click that. And then it looks like we're going to be able to stay out of the atmosphere just barely. As you can see, it's pretty close, but here's the lowest point, and we have not dipped back into it, so we have a nice and stable orbit. It's a very low orbit, I would say. It's about as low as you can get, maybe, without getting into the atmosphere there and coming back down. So basically what you could do here is you can use the solar system map in order to locate your next target, basically. So we're going to click on that, and here's that solar system, and we're going to select the moon, and the moon is highlighted, and you can zoom in on it. So there you go. So there it is. You can see our satellites going around the Earth there. And let's go ahead and build a rocket. So we're going to put a capsule in there because we're going to have an astronaut in there. So we're going to put a small fuel tank, not the tiny one, but a smaller one, because we need a little bit more fuel in order to be able to make these maneuvers. We're still going to have that vacuum engine there, because we're going to be making those maneuvers outside the atmosphere. Put a small decoupler on it. And we don't need a fairing because it just covered the little engine there. So now we have a fuel tank and a first stage. And I'm going to go ahead and put a little parachute on top. see if I can bring this guy back. All right. So now we are going to do a launch. And we need to get one orbit in a stable orbit here. So we're going to fire this thing off. We're going to point it a little bit to the side there so we can get an orbit. We're just maybe barely out of the atmosphere there. I just don't think it's going to happen. All right, let's try it again. I think I need to launch this thing a little bit more straight. Also, I needed to change the staging because it fired off the parachute instead of the decoupler. All right, so it's a little bit straighter this time. It's a little bit higher. That's good. So let's just get this thing rolling here. We're going to throttle back down a little bit because we're in the vacuum there, so that's fine. So let's go ahead and throttle up. Point it up a little bit. Now it's pointed out to the side. Let's get that perigee up there. Here we go. Now let's get the apogee out. Oh, that's a little bit too far. I think we've got an escape velocity, so we got to turn that thing back around a little bit and slow us down so we can get back into Earth's orbit. Okay, now we're in Earth's orbit. That's good. All right. So now, if we kept going here without any maneuvers, we just plummet back down to Earth. So we have to basically keep on slowing this thing down and get it a little bit closer to the moon. All right, so now I'm going to try to widen this a little bit by firing it out. That's widened us out closer to the moon there. Okay, that's good. And now when we're on the opposite side, we can go ahead and increase our velocity a little bit, so to push out the orbit on the opposite side. And then that should allow us to capture the moon. So right now we are going to turn this rocket forward there, and we are on the opposite side of the moon. So if we fire the rocket, you'll see it go out there, and now it's around the other outside of the moon, which is good. And we've just done our burn there from the opposite side. And when we get close to the moon, we are going to need to slow down basically to get captured into the moon's gravity. Because right now we're still the moon is just not big enough to affect us, to capture us completely. So we need to slow it down. And as we get closer, right here, see, I'm turning it around, and I've fired it the opposite way. And now we're getting a little slower. So when we're close to the moon, we should be able to get intercept it. So we got to bring in this orbit from the Earth toward the moon, and then we do that by, of course, thrusting in the reverse direction that we're traveling, and then the opposite point will get closer to us. There we go. And now we're in a moon orbit. And I just basically thrust it a little bit more to make it a little bit of tighter orbit there. So you can see the gravity well there is the dashes, and we are clearly within the moon's orbit right now. And we are not going back to Earth unless we do a maneuver. And basically what that maneuver will be is, once again, if you're on the opposite side, then it'll make the opposite point go out further if you're pointed in the way that you're traveling. So yes, this is rocket science, but it's really not that difficult if you can just understand a few things. So you see I'm pointed forward, and the opposite point of where that is, you can see it go out. There it goes. and it's going to basically intercept the Earth. We're going to speed this up. We're going to get a little bit closer here. You'll notice that our perigee is in the Earth's atmosphere, so that will slow us down. We're going to get a little bit of heat, but that's okay. We are going to deploy the parachute. It's going to slow us down and open it up. There we go. And we are going to splash down nice and safe in the water. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed this, and the next video I will be doing the first campaign mission. I'm going to go ahead and recover this for some money. But yeah, please join it next episode for the first campaign.